like to welcome all of you, those of you who have been coming all along, and newcomers to the Modern Christian Mystic. Here, we're coming to the end of the second year of these programs, and in fact, Adrian and I were just talking about what to do for the third year, and I'm tossed up between the topic Christian Enlightenment, the awakening of the third millennium Christian, or the 12 steps as a modern way to enlightenment, viewing the use of the 12 steps not so much as a therapy for addiction as a way in which to actually arrive at unitive understanding of oneself, the life systems, the earth, the universe, and God. I'm thrilled today to be able to introduce you to Dale Allen Hoffman, a recent friend of mine. We met when I gave a talk down in Asheville, North Carolina, on the new book. It was part of the promotion of the Modern Christian Mystic, and he had some interesting parallels to make between my work and his work, which seem to come together in such a way as to be almost miraculous in some ways. It really is astounding. And so tonight is not only the presentation that we're doing, tonight is the first step in setting up a way in which to interact together on tours down through the southern states and further tours of him up here, where we work together to talk about this awakening of a mystical relationship to the Hebrew scripture and, of course, through it to the presence of God, and understand how that will reconcile itself to Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucius, and the indigenous traditions and all the traditions that spring from them, so that without doing theological damage to Christianity or to Buddhism or to Hinduism, finding a way in which they overflow and really become different rivers pouring into a single ocean of divinity and awakening that will give us global purpose at the human level, as well as to provide the moral impetus for us to be more conscious of the way in which we treat the planet, and to understand that we don't own the planet, that we're simply moving through, and that those who come behind us are closer to those who own it. Before we start, we'll be beginning with a meditation, a short one, and then Dale and I will be interacting on the various verses of the Lord's Prayer, given that that's the core. Certainly there is a plethora of Aramaic exploration here on disc for sale from Dale, and there are 3 of my books, at least here, including The Modern Christian Mystic, The Architecture of the Soul, and Cultural Addiction. But before we start, those of you who have been here a lot of the time on the way for the last few years, you might remember that very handsome older couple. They're 2 very tall, thin people. Her name is Ellen Heston, and she came up to me at our last gathering here a month ago and said, full of apology, that she can't be here tonight. And when I thanked her for being considerate enough to say so and asked her why, I found out that they're sawing off both of her knees, and she's getting double knee replacements today, on the same day. So I told her that I would like to kind of dedicate this experience to Ellen Heston and her husband, who's at her bedside at Mary Hitchcock, and to ask all of you that in some way in your meditation to just be spiritually supportive of her recovery. She's a really sweet woman, and I can't imagine. I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2, but I think it's both knees. I think they're doing both at the same time. So, I mean, who wants to feel that? So I would like you, when we do the meditation, to bear Ellen Heston in mind. So much for that. We're going to begin, as we usually do, with a brief meditation I'm going to ring the chime where we understand, as always, that we're leaving the frenetic, maddening pace of all of our lives, and we're entering into the time of the more significant meanings to life, the time to consider the depth and truth of our own being and how that being is wed to the universal being of God. So there'll be the ringing of the bell where we kind of breathe away from our normal run of insanity and enter into a wider understanding of the important questions. But tonight, instead of me ringing the bell a second time, what's going to happen is, once I can feel that we're all down, I'm going to give the nod to Dale, and Dale is going to recite the Aramaic Lord's Prayer to as close to what the apostles heard from the Master as we can get at this time. And so I would suggest, it's up to you how you do this, but I would suggest that you keep your eyes shut and allow the impact of the Aramaic prayer, hearing it for the first time more than likely, in the same way that the apostles heard it for the first time at one point. And allowing it to come out of the silence like the birthing of the Word, the Logos, the Christ Logos, over the event horizon of the beginning. So, but if you're better off with your eyes open, or if you're afraid that one of us might come running down the aisle after you or some such thing, you only have to worry about him. I'm perfectly safe. Okay? So, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to do the usual talk down. You should have both feet on the ground and your hands comfortably in your lap. Your back should be erect without being forced. And we'll begin with the chime. I'm not going to do any talk down or breathing instructions. Just breathe deeply and allow yourself to kind of exhale the tensions of the day and inhale the presence of what we're going to experience tonight. And if you can kind of keep aware, Dale, I'll give you a nod.
Tete Malkuta, Nechwet Subiana, Aikana, Mashmaya, Abbaara, Lan Rachma Desunka Yomar, Washmachlan Chalbein, Lakdachain, Akanan Rakhanan. ولا تحلى لهبة سيون إلى باتسان نبيشو متولد إلاتي مالكوثك وحيلك ما تشبوتا الألام ألمين
eternal beings, of which we are born forth from the realm of the all and the only. I am empty with the awe of your presence and the purity of your name. Empower my creative beingness through your expansion from the ever-present realm, as I realize our strength and virtue as one, on the manifest earth as in the unmanifest realm. Provide the nourishment of your insight and understanding through me now and in every moment. Release my hidden past as I cancel my past concerns with others. Do not let me lose my true self in forgetfulness, but wholly release me from my errors of perception. For thy realm is the absolute, the all, and the only, and our strength of virtue and magnificence from cosmic gathering to cosmic gathering, from age to age. May these be the rooted center from which all my actions flow. Amen. What's obvious at the outset is how Buddhist and Taoist that really does sound. And that shouldn't surprise us, because Jesus, as I've said before, was not born in Chicago. He was born in the East and would have been aware, if not physically present to, the main spiritual insights and happenings along the trade routes to the East. So while Western Christianity is one version and a valid version of Christianity, the case could be made that it's time for a second tradition that my daughter, Becky, back there has called the Eastern Reformation. The understanding of the Word of Jesus in the context of the other Eastern insights. So, we're going to go down through the Our Father that we all know. Dale calls it the Aramaic prayer of Yeshua, who becomes Jesus as things get translated into Greek and Latin and so on and so forth. What I'm going to do now is to give us the actual prayer that we're used to, the line that it's translated as, what I've said about it in the Lord's Prayer section of the Modern Christian Mystic, and then Dale, at certain points where he wants to unpack a particular Aramaic meaning, will come in and blast off with that to unpack that and pull out the interior of what that is. So, we begin again. Our Father, who art in heaven. And the translation, our one absolute eternal being, of which we are born forth from the realm of the all and the only. So we begin in the book, Our Father who art in heaven. Awakening results from an evolution from below, as well as an involution from above. From below, the sequence is matter to life to mind. From above, consciousness to bliss. They intersect in the enlightened person, the one risen or prepared to receive what Yeshua called the birth from above. Heaven is that ineffable state where only God fully knows God. We cannot know God as God knows God completely. In our finitude, whatever we know, there is always more to know, and infinite more to know. We do not know something. We do know something which we call Father, Son, and Spirit. We know that God is our source, our Father and source of all. And the Father and source of all is what's being referred here as the realm of the all and the only. So we're really encountered with the opening to mystery. You know, we say this for our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, think of it, you know, over and over and over again. And yet when we unpack even one line of it from the Aramaic, this thing opens up our one absolute eternal being, of which we are born forth from the realm of the all and the only.
I have two beautiful insights from the Aramaic to shed some light on this first line. The first is the first word, translated as our Father, Avun. There's different forms of that word, Avun, Abi. The form, if he would have spoken of God, it would have been Allah. In the Hebrew, it would have been Elohim. The sound El in the Hebrew, the sound Ah in Aramaic, is the sound of the feminine. The sound at the end, Him, in the Hebrew, is the sound of masculine. At the end of Avun is the N sound, which is the sound of completion, the masculine. The word is simultaneously feminine and masculine. What do I mean by that exactly? My perception of this paper is nowhere. It has no physical location. It's non-manifest. It's the realm of the all and the only. Malkuta Dashmaya, kingdom of heaven. Aya means either no limit or something that is always growing. Think vine. Now, when I'm looking in terms of womb, my perception of the paper is feminine. It has no actual location. It's a spiritual, perceptual state, whereas the paper itself is masculine. It's darkness, it's physical matter. Darkness meaning I don't necessarily know what this is. I can fully be the one. You cannot know God, in other words, in the Aramaic understanding. You can't know God. When you know God, all of a sudden you've got two, and that's the quagmire of Avun. There's four phonetic sounds. Ah, bu, u, m. The bu sound is the eternal sound of birth, of a birthing forth. Ah, the absolute, birthing forth. Already we've got a quagmire. We have the absolute, the all, and the only, but yet something seems to be coming from that. The original sin. Now, in the Hebrew Torah, that original sin yielded something. We had the feminine, and we had the creation of masculine, which eventually became that end sound at the end. And when we take something that's whole and we cut it in half, say a battery, positive and negative, take a power line and pull it like this, what happens? We've got heat, we've got a circuit, we've got fire. So the original sin was okay, maybe I'm separate from source. Maybe there's me and there's God. And the birth, and is expansion, something that's growing. It's like I and G in English. And is physical matter in my hand. So from the absolute, the perceptual, as I focus and as that expands, which we'll talk about near the end of the prayer, and now here it is. It's about walking between two worlds. Now, a little bit of light for Dashmaya heaven. Yeshua did not say in Aramaic what we would understand today as pray in my name. The word he used was shemach, pray in my shemach. The ch sound at the end means mine. Shem is, if I say a name to you, one that I use often is Ray Charles. This will be the longest explanation of all of these because this opens the whole prayer. If I say Ray Charles, people smile, you hear a name, you picture a face in your consciousness, you hear music, you got the right one day, Okay, you see the keyboard, the piano, you feel that. That overall feeling of what's resonating within you is your perception of his Shem, his consciousness. So what Yeshua was saying before this prayer was not even necessarily pray in this way, but pray in this consciousness. Enter into this consciousness and pray from here. And the first line, it's almost like the first word of the prayer has the entire prayer embedded within it. And there was, in Jewish mysticism, in Kabbalah, in Judaism, they say it was all there in the first letter. If you didn't get it in the first letter, they put it in the first word. If you didn't get it in the first word, they put it in the first verse. If you didn't get it in the first verse, they, and as so on and so on and so on. And you go and buy books sometimes, and all the meat's in the first 30 pages, and the rest is fluff. But there's no fluff here. It's a further tuning, and this is a beautiful calling back to God as God. Like I say, if you talk about how you know God, there's two. Yeshua would have had absolutely no concept whatsoever of a separate God. He understood that the supreme ultimate, the yin-yang of the I Ching, that was not two separate energies, but rather two qualities of energy within one singular process, which were intertwined within each other.
For those of you who don't want to meditate on Ray Charles, you can join me with Mick Jagger.
You need a bigger imagination for the lips, though.
The next line, hallowed be thy name. The translation, I am empty with the awe of your presence and the purity of your name. I remember we've talked over and over and over again about the notion of emptying, about the Buddhist notion, shunyata. And there it is right in the prayer. I am empty within the awe of your presence and the purity of your name. Hallowed be thy name. All cultures seek to understand the source, the one, and they call that one by many names. The name is not the one. It is a name for the one. The one remains mysterious, ineffable, undifferentiated, though still the source of the many. In the Hebrew Christian Bible, the prophet mystic Moses realizes the name of God as being itself. I am who am, says the one through the soul of a bush, not George. I am being itself. Cultures are all collective attempts to name and to know being. To name and to know, not know about, but to name and to know being itself as ourselves. That is the unitive understanding.
In the Aramaic, the word mitkadash, shmak, is that word name. We've got Shem that shows up there. Mitkadash, and Aramaic kadash, and the Hebrew kadash, also the Aramaic kudsha. The word spirit in Aramaic is ruha. It's an outward expansive force. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit about this now, and it's going to come to a gorgeous completion at the end of the prayer, in an unexpected place, actually. The outward expansion of that, Albert speaks of the event horizon, and that expansion, everything is always in a state of expansion. If you focus on what you don't like in your life, you get what you don't like. If you focus on what you love, you get what you love. It's kind of, well, it should be common sense. But, Kadash is a word that means at once a vacuum or a no thing, and also a spaciousness, no limit everywhere. It's everything contained within a potential that is non-manifest. It's the word when you hear Holy Spirit, Ruha de Kudsha. Not holy as in up here, better than secular, but holy, all-encompassing, all-embracing. all-inclusive. When Yeshua said, be perfect as Allah in heaven is perfect, that word there was gamir. Gamir does not mean perfect as in without an obvious flaw. In the Aramaic, that word would be gamar. What gamir means is all-encompassing, all-embracing. When it says perfect love, mashalom love, casts out all fear, it's all-inclusive love, all-embracing love. And coincidentally, the word mashalom, that means complete, is the word when it says that Judas turned over Yeshua to the authorities. The word was mashalom, which means complete. It means complete of a circle. In the Greek, it's paradidomi, which means the same thing. It means complete. It means complete. And what we're speaking of here is allowing yourself, as in Philippians 2:7, to empty yourself out, and to completely empty yourself out and become nothing. Think of the first beatitude, the poor in spirit in the Aramaic. Better translation is home in breath. And allowing, understanding that your only true possession is your breath. And you are your breath, the breath of life. Love your neighbor as yourself. What does self mean? It means breath of life in Aramaic. Napshah. Neighbor means any object of your attention. Not necessarily just the person next to you. This is a calling to lay it all down. This is the true surrender at the beginning of the prayer. First we acknowledge that we have borne forth from the one, that we are as the one. And now it's, and I ain't got a clue. And we're cleaning the slate right from the get-go. And that's what this is. I am empty within the awe of your presence and the purity of your name, the tetragrammaton, the unnameable name of God. Because when you name it, you create it. So if you're creating it, it's not the source, is it? It's the outpicturing of the source. And this is honoring that.
That entire understanding of neighbor, expanding the notion of neighbor beyond the human neighbor, is crucial for our time, because the neighbor, anything in our perception or consciousness, really opens out to an eco-Christian understanding of our relationship to the other species, which are considered good in Genesis, to the life systems of the planet, and everything that we find in a state of radical decay, threatening the generations that follow us. We would now have the basis for bringing the entire Christian establishment with its whole moral charge behind it in defense of the life systems, because they are neighbor to us. They are each neighbor to us. So these things have a meaning that is so far beyond what we would think of as the ecclesial meanings. They really are religious, religio. They link things back together again. Like ligament, they link things back together again. We're going to have to wait for it until we have to write it down.
Love that thing that you perceive to be separate as your own breath of life. When he said, love your enemies, and in Aramaic that would have been acheru labueo v'laiku. Acher, chub is the sound of sparking a fire. U is the sound of something expanding, sparking a fire, and growing that, fanning a flame. Labueo, the bueo sound means stop breathing. Spirit and breath, same word in Aramaic. Who do you stop breathing in the presence of?
With regard to questions and comments, because we both could go on for 4 hours with this, write down your questions and we'll save some time at the end for that, so that we don't lose the rhythm of the prayer itself. Okay? But write them down. Okay, so then, thy kingdom come. Empower my creative beingness through your expansion from the ever-present realm. How many times in the last 2 years have we talked about self-emptying, shunyata, so that the breath of creation, the unmanifest, is made manifest through us? That's precisely what is being said here. Empower my creative beingness with your expansion, capital Y, your expansion from the ever-present realm through this form and that form and that form. That's right. The whole thing is right there. Thy kingdom come. The kingdom of God is the unimpeded presence of God. Eternal being, present in time. Jesus says that the kingdom is not of this world. He also says that his kingdom can be found in our midst. In true surrender, the silence, the stillness, the emptiness of the unmanifest, eternal God becomes manifest among us. We are then not of this world, though still in this world. We are the eternal present in time. And that's the kingdom in our midst. It's us. And that which we engender by allowing the breath to move forward through us.
Te malkuta. Te means come. Te means come. Come forcefully. Come with abandon. Malk means two different things. I'm going to go with this in phonetics without getting too technical. Malk means, in one direction, it means dissolve, vaporize, scatter, destroy. In the other direction, it means preserved for eternity or salted. So we've got something with a dual meaning here that means eternal, and it also means that it's non-local, that it's essentially spread everywhere. The U sound, again, like we had in Ruka and in Ahun, is expansion, a growth. From a no place, a place of no thing, we have a growth. Growth doesn't sound good, but we have a growing, a growing forth, a blossoming, flowering. At the end of that word, malkuta, is the sound ta. Ta is the sound of feminine. It genders the word feminine. It cannot possibly be translated as kingdom. Okay, well then what is it in the Greek? The word is basileia, which is a feminine gendered term. It cannot possibly be translated as kingdom. If things were feminine, they were often swung neutral. This is a case, and if it was neutral, it was swung masculine. In Yeshua's time, it wasn't even a belief of a masculine father. Abba, a little boy could call his sister Abba, and then I bow to that place within you where I know that we are one. And it was actually Malkuta comes from Malkatu, the old Canaanite, which was the name of the divine goddess, the divine feminine energy. Ta is feminine. That means it has no location. It's a spiritual state. It's a perceptual state. It's not a line in the sand you cross over this. And of course, in the beginning here, we've got Mo, which means it has no location and it's eternal. So we've got an eternal beingness, a spraying forth. You know, the font of fire. Yeah, exactly. That is coming forth. And it's not coming from somewhere else. It's not coming from up in the clouds. It's coming from within, because that's what the Ta is telling us. Ta means feminine. That means it's coming from me. It's coming from you, and we're all one. It's all the same. It's coming forth in this direction, not in that direction. And I think even reading it in the King James, we got that one. We can get that one as long as you have the sight. So, yeah.
We've spent the last 24 hours talking like this. And we're still friends.
And you're still here.
Yeah. I told Dale, I said, Carol's going to come home from school, and there'll be 2 pairs of shoes in the living room filled with dust. So it's going to be left.
I don't wear shoes, though.
Yeah, well, that's how you protect yourself. You just disappear completely. Okay, so then, thy will be done. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. So I'm going to read the one that I just read together with this one, because they roll on together. Empower my creative beingness through your expansion from the ever-present realm, as I realize, make real, as I realize our strength and virtue as one. As I realize power, strength, and virtue as one. The eternal, present in time, then redeems time, suffusing it with eternity. The eternal unmanifest, made into the manifest, is the will of God. That will that willed the universe, earth, life, and human culture into being is the same will that also sustains the cosmos, earth, life, and culture. The same will is made incarnate in Mary's womb as Father, Son, and Spirit. The inherent laws of gravity of the universe, gravity, electromagnetism, and the two nuclear forces, as well as the organizational ecology of the whole biosphere and the moral guidelines of cultures, are all expressions of that will. This can only be known by yielding one's will to the greater will of God. Thy will be done is the mantra for all mystics, and certainly for Christian mystics. It comes down to this: my life is no longer any of my business. It belongs to you.
Just a small insight with magnanimous implications. You're not in control. You control your little bit of the universe. You create your life, sure. You're being breathed. You are being lived. When you can allow yourself to finally down on the ground and allow yourself to be completely rooted out. This is in even further surrender when it says it's in three different forms in the Gospels. In three of the Gospels, sometimes Yeshua says it, sometimes the scribe says it back to him. And he said, what's the greatest of the Nemosa? Nemosa is a word of Greek origin that means law, ordinance. You go and steal something. If nobody catches you, no Nemosa. But yet, you set the aurita, a spiritual law, in motion. So regardless of the fact that maybe the ordinance won't get you, shouldn't be necessarily a threat, but we're looking at karma here. But he said, he restated the Hebrew Shema, Moria Alahan, Moria Chad Ho'od in the Aramaic. The Lord our God is one, is single, is only, is the uni. And then he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all of your mind, all of your breath of life, all of your willingness in the Aramaic, and love the object of your attention as your own breath of life. Hilak is not strength of, I'm going to hold on to Jesus with all I've got, hold on to Christ and hold on to what I know. It's exactly the opposite. It is the absolute letting go and falling backward into the abyss, knowing faith in the Aramaic, fully being, fully living. There's nothing in the word hayumanuta in Aramaic that has anything to do with faith in something unseen or something out there or external. It's completely consuming and fully being that which you are visioning, absolutely being that. And it's knowing as you fall back that, who is it that said, after you leave and before you lay under the hands of God? And as you fall back in that understanding that greater strength comes through, and it's getting to rock bottom, bottoming out, and being emptied out so that the greater strength can come through you. And willingness is the cosmic grease. And it's that willingness that allows that little small me doesn't know anything, and that's not a bad thing, that's a beautiful thing. And I see people that are so into the New Agey stuff, and they're so loving creating their little things, and that's fine and dandy, but until you've been created through consciously, you've got no idea what you're missing. And it's all right here. As he said in the Gospel of Thomas, the realm is right here. It's in front of you, but you do not see it. You can't see it. It's right here.
Yeah, baby, yeah. On the manifest earth as in the unmanifest realm, on earth as it is in heaven, on the manifest earth as in the unmanifest realm. To ask that God's will be done on earth, on this plane of existence, begs a question. What is God's will for earth? Life is God's will for earth. In Genesis, the whole creation is found to be good, and the human very good. Did God not will life for the insects, plants, birds, animals, and for humankind? Did God not will soil, rocks, mountains, streams, rivers, clouds, oceans, lakes, storms, and seasons into being? Is it not, therefore, the central responsibility for all Christians to open to God's will on earth? The idea that Christians can remain indifferent to life on earth and still be Christians is the moral equivalent of leprosy. That leprosy spreads corruption through the life community, the creation of God as Christ Logos. So earlier today we were talking about all of these topics. We obviously went down through this together, and one of the things that we discussed was my unwillingness to take anything seriously in the spiritual world without it having been preceded by genuine surrender. There is no spirituality by the focusing of the will. That is the ego projecting its own destiny. That is not it. It is the complete emptying out by true surrender, not withholding anything from the willingness to give oneself over and be then the venue. Rumi, I believe, calls it the let me be the empty flute that thou playest. So that the tune that comes out of us is the tune of God, the voice of God, through the empty flute. But as long as we insist, and there are always good reasons and plenty of people telling us why, well, yes, that's what he said, but you've got to be as long as all of that happens, nothing happens. It is only when the full-blown willingness to be risked, broken, and shared, when that willingness takes place, then the breath moves through us, and our will becomes the will of God on earth, and only then. Anything else is ultimately egotism, and is frequently perfectly wrong. Put together perfectly, eloquently, systematically, and perfectly wrong.
There's a Southern Baptist church in Asheville that's got a beautiful insight nugget of wisdom on its sign right now. And it said, when you get to your wit's end, you'll find God there. So if things seem to be deconstructing for you, let them deconstruct. Without getting off subject, the first Aramaic beatitude, home in the breath. The second Aramaic beatitude, not mourn as in falling into the abyss in the negative sense, but allow yourself to feel. Tuvehun la'avile, allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Bring in the third beatitude, allow those rigid inner structures, tuvehun lamakike, allow those to become liquid and melt back into the empty potential of no thingness. And we understand that which we focus on, maita, creates. This was at one time feminine. This was in someone's consciousness. This was an idea before it was even created. Everything starts in the unmanifest realms and births into the earth. And when we say earth, arka in the Aramaic, it means soil or dirt or anything that you see organic. It's manifest. But is it manifest? Maybe, maybe not. That's the cool thing. We're not going to know that in this human incarnation.
Give us this day our daily bread. Provide the nourishment of your insight and understanding through me now and in every moment. Give us this day. I once read somewhere that Mahatma Gandhi had said something like the following, quote, "If we have more than what we need, we have stolen it from the poor." If we really did only take what we need, no one would starve today. The insects, plants, birds, and animals would not be going extinct. The rainforest would be left intact. Again, what is God's will on earth as it is in heaven? Life. Remember, the prayer began with the word our, not mine. Not my Father who art in heaven, our Father. And why this day? Elsewhere, Jesus taught to take no thought of tomorrow, that tomorrow would care for itself. Living in this day means living in the now. And in the eternal now is where God lives. Because God is eternity in time, we meet God now or not at all.
Just by chance, the word for day, today, in Aramaic is yalman, and it doesn't mean day. They didn't measure days in the way that we think of days. There was no concept of, there was no word for the, there was no articles as in the chair. It was just chair. Everything was a recognition of a perception and consciousness. Yalmana means now. Spoke of everything was good, and it was good, and it was good. In the Aramaic and in the Hebrew, that word is tuv. That means ripe. Ripe. When's the only moment in time that you can judge a piece of fruit as being ripe or unripe? Now. May have been not quite ready yet then, and in a few moments it could be bad. So, and it also coincidentally is the first sound in Tuve of blessed are in the Beatitudes. It's saying right now, in this moment, right here, right now. And bread, lachma. Yeshua said, Inana lachma dachai. I am the bread of life. Dachai, chai. I come to give you chai, life, and give it more abundantly. Chai is not our parentheses in eternity. He's not speaking of a human life here. Between birth and death. Chai is life itself. Inana. Ina. Ina means I. There's some cases where he said Ina, like Ina Duwabi Chad Kanan, I and Allah are one. There was a joining, a unitive thing happening there. In this case, in Inana Lachma Dahai, it was I, or I within the I. Highest consciousness, life itself. When Moses heard, Ayar Ashar Ayah in the Hebrew, you translate it into Aramaic. It's Inana. I am, not I, Jesus, but the absolute highest consciousness of my being, which is the being of God. And lachma does not mean simply bread and physical nourishment. Lachma is insight, it's understanding, it's true realization. Yeshua just happened to be born in Bethlehem. And I told you earlier, that sound, the sound it's bait. It's the second letter in the Aramaic and the Hebrew alphabets. It's the letter for house. It's the first letter in the Gospel of John, it's the first letter in Genesis. Genesis in Aramaic, Bereshit, is also the first word in the Gospel of John. Beit is the letter that represents house in Hebrew and Aramaic. But it doesn't mean house as in frame. It means housing. Something is being housed. It means being. Lachma, insight and understanding. Realization. Yeshua was born into Beit Lahem. Beit Lahem, a being of insight, understanding, and realization. And when we're speaking here, it's every present moment by the yielded will as that bursts through. And it's that greater vision, that true nourishment. It's the spiritual nourishment that sustains us. You think it's the food, but guess what? It's not the food that keeps you going. It's the energy that created the food that keeps you going. And it's the difference between looking at the source and understanding the source of all things, the Tao, Elohim, Allah, or what most people would do is looking out here at that which expanded out and saying, that's the source right there, this food, and that's where addiction comes from. It's looking out here, and that's what evil meant. Kata in Aramaic, you fired at the target. The scorekeeper, if you missed, would yell, Kata, you missed the mark, take another shot. It was constructive criticism. It's the same in the Hebrew and in the Greek. When the scorekeeper grabbed the arrow out, he would say, Bishaw, meaning this is where you hit when you missed the mark. When you had an impure or incorrect perception, an error in perception, this is what you hit. And that's exactly what it is to believe that something out here is the source of your life. Money. Kespa, the root of all, money is the root of all evil. What that actually, Kespa is in Aramaic, is a root, it's a rate of physical exchange. It's money, it's silver. It's believing that your possessions can somehow give you happiness. Or believing that there is even a such thing as a rate of physical exchange. If Allah is the absolute only being, then this whole physical exchange thing is almost like a game of God looking back at God. And that's the essence of the Aramaic prayer, is that God looking back at God as God.
And to let that overflow into our understanding of what Eucharist really is, it is crucial for the whole Christian community to reawaken to what Eucharist really is. Eucharist is kind of like the tail end of a 5-stage evolution of eternity through time. And it would go like this. The unmanifest of that which is infinity and eternity, what Jesus would call the Father, manifests as Christ Logos. Imagine 2 bowls, all right? There's the bowl of the unmanifest and the bowl of the manifest, the Christ Logos. That's stage 2. That's the Son. Stage 3 is the realization on the part of Jesus of Nazareth. Not the neurotic statement, I am God, which is they understood him, which is why he wound up nailed to a tree. But instead, the enlightened insight, what God is, I am. The stuff that God is, I am. So what does he realize there in stage 3, Jesus of Nazareth? He realizes that he is the manifestation of the unmanifest, which is why he would say, the Father and I are one. So who is he then? He's the same consciousness that willed the universe into being. He is the Spirit that moved across the water, and later he would walk across the water. In the Gospel of John, he would once again move across the water because he's not subject to the laws of electromagnetism, gravity, the strong and weak nuclear force, because he's their source. So we now have stage 3, where his realization that his being is the unmanifest, and therefore he introduces a sub-universe. He penetrates the universe with the statement, take, eat, this is my body. Take, drink, this is my blood. He is now the creation God from the beginning, introducing an event into creation that will provide us with stage 4, which is the Eucharist. And stage 5 is our reception of it. And our reception of it winds up being the bread that does not decay, because it's not the bread anymore. Now it is a concentrated consciousness that we take in the effort to realize the very divinity of our being that he was trying to disclose to us. 5 stages: the unmanifest, the manifest, the realized state of Jesus of Nazareth, the engendering of the food that does not rot, and the reception of it in the now, which is us. If Christians understood what it is they walk away from, they'd understand in 1 month we could change the world. In 1 month we could change the world because of what that is.
You can't fake realization.
No, you cannot fake realization.
You can talk about it all you want, but you know, right tree bears right fruit, and right tree bears unright fruit. Can't miss it.
And it's only right in the now.
Absolutely. You got it. Hey.
I think Hoffman said that. Okay, so the next line, we're past the halfway mark now anyway, is forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And here's the translation from the Aramaic, and it's so to the point. Release my hidden past. Right? Those of you who have done 12-step work, that's what, or a real confession, a true sacramental confession. Release my hidden past as I cancel my past concerns with others. Release my hidden past as I cancel my past concerns with others.
That's so beautiful today. This is beautiful. Yeah.
So here it is. What was it again? Forgive us our trespasses. We trespass on each other, on each other's cultures. We trespass on the habitat of plants and animals, of the preborn. And we are in need, all of us, of constant and continual canceling of those debts. We are also trespassed upon, violated, abused, insulted, exploited, and like Jesus, murdered. So what's really being called for here, when we talked about this earlier, is the reinstitution of permeability. We harden when we have a secret cargo of our past, and that hardness prevents us from permeability to others, and their hardened state prevents them from permeability to us. So the very thing we've asked for, which is for the unmanifest to flow through us, is prevented by the membrane of that hardening. And that's where we see that pumped up spiritual thing, this kind of, I don't know how, this inflated sense of Jesus and are you saved and all that stuff. All of that stuff is the ego barking out with the presence of a power within itself, but not able to yet become permeable, to flow, to feel the flow of that truth, which is love, which is, of course, the presence of the unmanifest in time, the presence of God, the presence of eternity manifested in this moment, now. Dale's one of the few people that I've heard use that play on words I've been using for years, called it's interesting that the word nowhere is comprised of now here. And it really carries in it that kind of insight of both sides of meaning. Now here is nowhere, and nowhere is now here. If we're good with time, so if you want to keep on.
The core, especially in the Aramaic, the core of Yeshua's teachings is true forgiveness. And we really don't have a clue. Well, when you've been rooted out and birthed through, you've got a clue. But, in the whole, in the culture, especially in fundamentalism, which completely misses the fundamentals of the teachings and focuses on the inane things, true forgiveness, what we have now is the Greek concept of pardoning. I pardon you. I let you off the hook. I am spiritual, so anything you did, don't worry about it, because I'm fine. I'm good. I'm spiritual. You're fine. No, really. No, I'm serious. Really, you're okay. I pardon you. I pardon you. So that's a great way of someone comes up, they show up, and I go into overdrive mode, and they walk away. I feel okay. They walk around, I go into overdrive mode. They walk away. I feel okay. So obviously it's you, and it's you, and it's you. But a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Michael Rice, says, if something's happened to you 87 different times and 42 different people, who's been there every time? It's all about spiritual resonance and projection. It's about love the Lord your God with all of your heart, all of your heart, all of those places within your being, all of those places in your being those ones you're ashamed of, those hardened cores that you've almost cut off from yourself. And you've got that light part of yourself. You might feel good about this part of yourself. Woe to you, though, whose eye is darkened, how deep will your darkness become. And you cut that part off and say, somehow I don't like that. And you try to push that down. That cutting off, the creating the positive and the negative, the light and the dark, there's a word for that in Aramaic. That word was Satana. Does it sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Satana. The voice that speaks back to you from the darkness when you're tempted in the desert. The word desert, madra in Aramaic, means raw, vulnerable, unprotected state. Your all-encompassing breath led through your all-encompassing holy breath into a vulnerable state and divided and was there tempted, met the accuser, the tempter, the resistor. When you go into that fragmented state of being and you're in Satana, coincidentally in Islam, this is jihad. Inner spiritual turmoil. There's a lesser jihad that you can project out, but Muhammad said clearly, unify that which is within and do not project your inner jihad out onto the infinite faces of Allah until you have first united that which is within, and that's the catch. If you do the work, there's nothing to project out. So what you see as the heavy, I don't want to say it right way, but the heavy fundamentalist Islam is exactly the same as heavy fundamentalist Christianity. It's no different. It just has a different face. But we have that fragmented state. So whenever Yeshua says, do not doubt, the word's petplug in Aramaic. It means do not divide, do not cut in half. So let's hypothetically say I've got positive and negative. I've got a battery. So what happens if I'm able to cut that negative pole off of the battery and get rid of it? What happens? I have no power. Nothing. Why? Because I've said something is not God. And the word that Yeshua used for God is Allah, which means absolute everything, all included with the manifest earth, which is this little thing that's happening right here, right now. It's all God. He did not say in Aramaic, is it not written in your namosa, in your law, that I said that ye are gods? He didn't say that. The word was the Allah. If he said the Allahun, it would be gods. He didn't say that. He said, is it not written in your law that I said that you are God? That's kind of scary, isn't it? The first thing that happens for most people is, we're not scared of our darkness. We're used to our darkness. It's easy to hide in darkness. You can't hide in light, and you also can't push darkness out. Either you are or you aren't. Either you are a being of light, either you were born in original blessing and you are pure consciousness, or you're darkness. But you can't hide. You can't, an enlightened being walks into the room, everybody's turning and like, who the heck is it? And in a lot of cases, it's someone that doesn't even know that it's even happened to them. I've worked for 15 years to manifest Tete Malkuta, the kingdom in my life, when my wife's had it the whole time. You know? And she didn't have to do anything for it.
So then the other piece that is absolutely critical to the allowing the projecting to end is confession. Confession. And confession, I would say that if we could divide all of Christianity in its real functional state into surrender, confession, Eucharist, and service. That's Christianity in 4 movements. That's the whole Christian symphony. Do it again. Surrender, confession, Eucharist, and service.
And it always begins with surrender.
It always begins with surrender. And in fact, the other 3 are varying forms of surrender. Once we've surrendered, we can surrender that which causes us to hold our breath. Right? We can allow that out. We can surrender to the opening of ourselves to receive the breath of God, the new breath, so that we can breathe. And then we can surrender that to the world in whatever way that happens. But unfortunately, so much of Christianity has been trivialized, especially sacramental Christianity, has been trivialized by a lack of adequate vision brought to it. And that's really what all of this is about. It's not about a rejection of exoteric, or at least for me, certainly. I have never, ever rejected exoteric Christianity, because right in the midst of exoteric Christianity is God to eat. How can I walk away from that? What would I be? If it were true that we could eat the consciousness of eternity, what else is important in light of that? That thought, what I just said to you, caused me to go to Mass every day for 25 years and contemplate the question myself. What else is important? So every day, I was practicing Catholic at the time. I had access to the Eucharist. I think that's the fundamental weakness of episcopal Christianity. You can't get the Eucharist every day. Because once you realize what it is, once that's made real, what else is important? What? Shine your shoes? Wash the car? Get to...
It's not shining your shoes.
Shine your feet, your toenails? Polish your toenails? Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from evil. Do not let me lose my true self in forgetfulness, but wholly release me, W-H-O-L-L-Y, but wholly release me from the errors of my perception. I'll read it again. Do not let me lose my true self in forgetfulness, but wholly release me from the errors of my perception. Lead us not into temptation. The only real temptation for the true mystic is to take back his or her will. I have heard the word ego used as an acronym for easing God out. When I once again focus on my will, the will of the egoic self, the greater will of God is eclipsed, impeded in its movement. Because pain is always the result, we are asking God for help to avoid reclaiming our own will over God's will. When we fail, we simply surrender again. deliver us from evil. When we rescind our surrender and kneel before the altar of our egos, once again, we are immediately open to all forms of evil. In this part of the prayer, we are asking for help. Please deliver us from doing evils as well as from being victimized by evil. Mostly, deliver us from the evil of lying to ourselves again, from building a false self again, from living in hell again. Continue. For thine is the kingdom. The translation from the Aramaic is, for thy realm is the absolute, the all, and the only. For thy realm is the absolute, the all, and the only. We return to our recognition that the kingdom is in our midst. It is God, the Christ Logos. We acknowledge that this kingdom is our source, the source of the entire manifest universe, that the kingdom is the whole cosmos, the whole earth, the whole community, and the whole community of human cultures. This acknowledgement is another surrender, another opening of our essential selves. That same willingness to not project outward onto other cultures, but instead to become willing to be emptied of that and then manifest that which is unmanifest in our own culture. Later in the book, I speak about the modern missionary would be that person who goes to other cultures to discover how Christ is present there, and then comes back and teaches us in their language why the Christ Logos and how the Christ Logos is to be understood as the Tao, or mind, or Brahman, or whatever it might be. Confucius calls it sincerity and the Tao.
Who do they say that I am? Who do you say that I am? Inanna, in Aramaic. Who do you say that absolute highest awareness of the one, the only, the absolute, and the all is? You say it's me? It's not me. It's that which births through me that does the works. I of mine own hands can do nothing. When we get that, once you get it, it's amazing. Last weekend in North Carolina, I had a weekend retreat where we did breath work and we did a 2-hour Beatitudes direct experience workshop and 2 hours with the Lord's Prayer and some other of Yeshua's teachings that we had. And there was people that came up to me and they were just like, I got it. I got it. Yeah, I had it here and I thought I got it, but it's like, and once that door opens, it never shuts again. It doesn't mean that, stuff may not hit the fan occasionally. You may not go unconscious. And there's nothing actually in, going back a line, there's nothing in the Aramaic that says lead us not. There's no word for lead there. It doesn't exist in that. It actually was essentially do not let me. And that's essentially this. We're saying, it's thy realm. It's not my will, but thine. It's that, look at all the surrender. It's just layers and layers of...
I've always thought that was a bad rap. Lead us not.
Well, it's like, Yeshua was led by the Holy Spirit into the desert. It doesn't say it in that way either in the Aramaic. It's through the holy breath, he entered into the desert. There was no, come on now, let's go to the darkness. Don't take me into the darkness, God. It doesn't make any sense if you think about it. It doesn't make any sense. Little tiny clarifications like that.
Well, those little clarifications, yeah, they open up the possibility for realizations that really do point toward enlightenment and awakening. And, and enlightened and awakened people are not controllable by the forces that would control them. They're free. And that is the whole purpose, is to be free. So, for thy realm is the absolute, the all, and the only, and our strength, in other words, thy realm is the absolute, the all, and the only, and our strength of virtue and magnificence, which we translate as power and glory. From cosmic gathering to cosmic gathering, from age to age. Amen. So, another recognition that the will and creativity behind all evolution is the will, the creativity, the power of God. That power is the ever-present, ever-growing Spirit of God at every level, from the quantum to the atomic, all the way to the galactic and universal. That power in Christian mystics results from our surrender to it. Surrender of ego power enables us to become expressions of that power, which is the will of the living and emergent God. And the glory, the beauty of the created order, the depth and glory of the night sky, the thundering expansion of the cosmos that we were talking about in link with the expansionary constant linked to gravity, the flight of the eagle, the breaching of the whale, the leap of the cat, the throbbing hooves of the horse, the presence of the beating heart, breath and love are all the glory and beauty of God forever and ever. From pre-time, during time, and following time. The kingdom, the power, and the glory are all the very presence of our eternal source, God, our destiny. And we will not withdraw from surrender. Then, Amen, or Amen, chanted, which is the Western equivalent of the Eastern It is also an assertion that all the foregoing is true and everlasting. Amen and Om are the sounds of God's presence through the multi-level universe. Amen is our commitment to that presence.
Strength of virtue and magnificence. Not love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, holding on, but willingness, virtue, allowing yourself to be rooted out so the greater strength comes through. Tishmukta, magnificence. Just by chance, in the Aramaic and the Hebrew, the word translated as fear and fear God. In the Aramaic, it's tedkala, which doesn't mean only fear. What it actually means is a heightened alertness, a heightened consciousness. You walk into a darkened alley and you hear something crack, and all of a sudden you're firing on all cylinders. Is that really fear? Or is that a heightening of the senses? It's almost a birth of a child in front of your eyes. It's all-encompassing. It's the absolute all. And it's the honoring and the understanding and the being state of, you can't even put it into words. That's what this is about. It's not just about glory in the clouds. This is about Understanding that at the core, when you go back, you go down to the core of the matter of what you're experiencing here, all of this stuff doesn't mean anything. The baby in front of you, the essence, that living, breathing entity, that's Malkuta Bashmaya in the Aramaic. That's what heaven is. And this is the honoring of the power and the glory. And the absolute core, the core of the word prayer in Aramaic is completely lost in the Greek and the Latin and going into the English. Forever and ever. Forever and ever is nice and it's great. And somehow how you saw the core beyond forever and ever and nailed, I shouldn't say nailed, how you how you somehow got the truth out of ever and forever and ever. And that's what kind of is really, you got the Aramaic core just from something, and it's right there in the modern Christian mystic. The core of the word prayer in Aramaic, sluta, praying, would be slutun. Prayer means to set a trap for, ensnare, or to cup God. Okay, what does that mean? Well, we know the Berashit, ikawiwa milta, mahal milta, ikawiwa with the laha. Before the beginning of creation, there was a consciousness creating, the Christ Logos, that birthed out and expanded out into the cosmos. And at every point of existence, there is this birthing, there is a growth, there is an expansion at all points. There's nowhere that you can't be, there's nowhere that you can be that there's not expansion. And in all of these points in expansion, the energetic imprint of the consciousness in that place, such as within me, I get what I focus on. Set a trap for God means it's the honoring of the ruka, the expansive force, the breath, the electromagnetism, the electricity, the cosmic expansion that moves out. It's an honoring that your ta, your feminine, the vision which you hold, as those planets move out, and they move out at such a rapid rate with all of this energy, all of this power, something, someone, a consciousness somewhere is holding a vision and cupping against those planets and creating what we know of as the universe. So when you focus, and I don't mean focus with your will, hold with your strength, but allow yourself to be rooted out, so that that consciousness, as that expansion happens in your life, and you ha'imanuta, faith without works is dead. Hai, the first part of that phonetically, conscious, spark of life, conscious awareness. Iman was an Egyptian term, rooted center. It basically means you stick a stick in the ground and you walk around it with a string. Iman, rooted center. Conscious of your rooted center. Births out, ta, from your vision, from that spirituality, from the perception. So as you hold that in faith, which is completely being, completely living, do not doubt, but do not divide, be single in vision. It is better to enter into the kingdom with one eye than to get cast into the Gehenna of fire, the positive and the negative, the light and the dark, with two eyes. A vision that's cut in half. And as you hold the vision, Ruka moves in, Ruka Dakucha, that all-encompassing breath, the breath of life itself, and expands that vision until bang, here it is in my hand. So from the beginning, from the absolute being, there is this apparent birthing forth that expands out until now it's physical matter. It went from nowhere to now here. We have it here in the cosmic gathering, or in the age, or in that, I don't like to say set a trap for God, but that's almost what it's like. You put the frame in place, and Amen, the sound of the feminine, the absolute, the source. Main, it's the rooted center. May these be the rooted center from which all my actions flow.
You trigger the whole insight that T.S. Eliot tried to grasp in the 4 quartets. At the still point of the turning world, neither flesh nor fleshless, neither from nor toward. At the still point, there the dance is, and there is only the dance. And do not call it fixity, where past and future are gathered. At the point, the still point. And that's that exact same principle.
And it's the amazing, it's a still point, but it has no location. And it's fluid, and it's moving, and it's breathing, and it's conscious. And when you've tasted the still point, nothing else means anything anymore. Nobody can take your life. Nobody can give you something that you don't already have. That's how you cannot believe both God and mammon. You cannot believe the graven image. Thou shalt have no graven images before me. Thou shalt have no illusions before me. Do not hide your lamp, your light, below a bushel basket. In Aramaic, the word is satah. Same as satana. It means slide or fall. Do not bamana. Do not cut me away and fragment me away from the whole. That which you judge another, you will be judged. That which you measure out will be measured unto you. Holy, W-H-O-L-L-Y, all-encompassing, all-embracing.
And so the definition of the word Amin is this, and this is how it ends. May these be the rooted center from which all my actions flow. That's what we're saying when we're saying Amen. We're saying, may these be the rooted center, the still point, from which all my actions flow. How do they flow? They flow by emptying. They flow by opening. They flow by surrender. Or they don't flow. If they don't flow, they harden and shrink. So it's almost time for us to close, and I thought what might be nice is to go back into the silence now, and then Dale, again, once we've come down to that, and you can feel it in the group at the beginning, the very presence, that the presence, but it's not fear, it's not startled, it's mindful, it's fully present, fully here. When the group reaches that, then you can recite the prayer of Yeshua again. And then typically, I dismiss the group and ask them to leave in silence. But we won't have to do that tonight, because I know many of you are going to want to meet Dale, and you might want to buy tapes and books from us if you're interested. And also, there is a basket.
What's a tape? What's that?
I mean, that's
Final. We have records.
I indicate the fact that I'm a dinosaur. There's a basket in the back. Dale has had to come up from North Carolina. He's not working in order to be able to do this. And all of it, plus last time's collection, will just go directly to him to help defray the cost of the flight and all of that. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to go and ring the chime. And when we're really present and down, you'll hear the prayer of Yeshua again. And then I'll ring the bell again a few moments after that, and that will be the breaking of the energy and the returning to time. Okay? Oh, questions? Sorry. Would you like to ask questions beforehand? Or could you leave them, do you want to leave them? Or we can just do them conversationally after. We are at 8:30, and I try to stay within the time frames. I'm going to take that as you're going to talk about the conversation. So, again, be in touch with your breath. Remember everything that Dale has said about the breath. That he did not say, pray in my name. He said, pray in my breath, or pray in my state of consciousness. So it's unitive prayer. We're praying as Jesus. How many times have we all heard, keep your eye on Jesus, keep the focus on Jesus? It's almost perfectly wrong. The idea is through Jesus to that which he's revealing as the presence of the Father, the unmanifest, manifest in time. He's supposed to, it's more like Salvador Dali's work, where he shows this translucence, among other things. Okay, so breathe.
Tete Malkuta. Yahweh Zibiana Kana Washmea Up Alba. Avlan Lachma Betsun Kana Yoma. Washmeklan Halbane Wakahin. Kana Dabhana Shwakan Lahayli. Wila Tachlan Lehnitzion. Ila Patsan